This is a bonus mini-episode featuring Matt Cameron's answers to listener questions. You can hear Matt's entire full-length episode by subscribing to The Trap Set on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. This question comes from Parker. Parker is a fantastic drummer who plays with a group or an artist called Joan as Policewoman, and prior to that, he played with Jeff Buckley. And he wants to know who your biggest drumming influence is.
Ooh. My biggest drumming influence, well, there's kind of a trio. Like it's Elvin Jones, Tony Williams, Steve Gadd. Like those three guys, I continuously come back to for inspiration. And if I ever feel like I'm stuck with my drumming, I can always get inspired by listening to their drumming.
I've seen Elvin a few times. And the first time I saw him was in Boston, and I was sitting about as far from his kid as I am from you right now. And I definitely cried. Like, it was so joyful and beautiful. It was like nothing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Did you get to see Tony?
I did. I got to see Tony play twice here in Seattle at Jazz Alley in a very small room. It was pretty fantastic. I mean, there was one point where he just kind of talked to the audience, you know, like he played a set and then he just talked to us, and he talked about his drum set at the time.
Did he have a big yellow Gretsch?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Black dots on the top and bottom?
Yep, absolutely. With all the Ks, that K in the middle.
I just love that guy.
Yeah. I got to meet him once at the Grammys in 1994. It was the year that Soundgarden won 2, and Tony was in the audience when we were leaving the Grammys. I saw him leaving, and so I ran right up to him and I introduced myself. And he was telling me that he just switched to DW, and that he was working on a rock album, and that's right before he passed away.
Are you a fan of his rockier stuff like Emergency?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Oh my God.
Absolutely.
And I love his weird vocals on that album too.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Where are we going? So weird.
They're very weird. Very weird.
And Gadd, did you get to meet him a few times?
I did. I got to meet him at a Yamaha Groove Night kind of drum concert. He was one of the drummers.
He's the embodiment of Yamaha groove.
Totally. So I got to meet him there, and I actually had to play in front of him.
Did you really feel nervous about it?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You did?
Yeah. Because Andy Newmark was there, another drummer I love. All these guys. It was really, really fun night, though.
Okay.
He was great.
Chris asks, if your drumming was a spirit animal, what would it be?
Spirit animal? Oh, boy, I'm going to have to choose I'm going to have to choose a wolf.
Nice.
I'll choose the wolf. Always roaming, always searching.
Okay.
Always moving.
I would choose.
Always hungry.
For your spirit animal, I would choose a cobra. Because I think of your drumming as very patient. Ooh. Especially your backbeat it's farther back. Ooh, nice. And it has this like kind of coiled up feeling that's ready to attack.
Love it.
Okay. This one comes from Dan. Dan is the drummer for one of the Sub Pop's current artists, Father John Misty.
Oh, cool. And my son saw their concert and loved it. He's a huge Father John Misty fan.
Well, maybe someday we can put you guys together.
Beautiful.
Dan says that he heard a rumor once that you do not play rim shots, but play the dead center of the head. Any truth to that?
I play top dead center of the head. Very few rim shots.
What do you mean top dead center? Like
top,
just a little bit on...
A little bit above
dead
center. I don't think I have it on it. I've never tried to aim for it or anything. It's just kind of the way I sit and the way I set up. And I guess I'm trying to hear a certain sound, so maybe that's part of it.
But it's not something you've consciously thought about over the years?
Well, I mean, I've consciously thought about trying to get a consistent snare sound. But that always came... with me, just kind of through tuning and the snare drums I used.
How much of your playing in general is conscious, and how much of it is kind of instinctual?
I think a lot of it is instinctual. I mean,
Like when you're coming up with parts, one thing that people always talk about with your playing is that you play odd time signatures and make them feel natural.
Right.
But to me, that just seems like that's what you're feeling, and that's why it sounds that way.
That's right. Because the music is written in a way that is more instinctual. So I think that's the way I always try to approach it. If I was in, in a more of a progressive rock band, it might be a different story where we really try to accentuate accenting and, groups of time and all that type of stuff. But would
you ever do that? Like if
Robert
Fripp called you up and said, "Come on tour with Crimson for a month"?
Totally. Are you
All
kidding?
right.
I would do that in a heartbeat, man.
Eugene asks what your favorite Soundgarden album is.
Ooh, I like the first album. I like Screaming Life. I just like how it's pretty much live in the studio kind of record. Like we played everything live, and then Chris, he sang his vocals afterwards, and he added some guitar. I really like that aspect of it, is that it's super real, super raw, 8 tracks, Jack and Dino, reciprocal. What's up?
When you listen back to the records that you've made with any of the bands that you've played with, do you ever feel unhappy with how it sounds?
Yes, but that eventually goes away.
It's usually right after you make
yes.
it that you still feel
there's
like
normally
you could
like
go.
some disappointment for me after a record is mixed and mastered, I must say. Just because like I'm kind of anal about where my placement in the music is. Sometimes I feel it might be too far back,
How did you learn to assert yourself when it comes to those things?
It took
Because
some time.
the mixers are always like, "Oh yeah, you're a drummer. Of course you want the drums to be
The
louder."
mixers are the experts for sure. But when you start working with guys that kind of hear what you're trying to do, like they might understand what you're trying to get across as a musician, then that gave me confidence. Like working with Brendan O'Brien, that definitely gave me a lot of confidence in the studio. So I guess it's just a matter of experience. The more you do it, the more experience you get from different engineers, producers, as to how to get, a round kick drum and a tight snare and a, good room sound and the right compression on the overheads and just, all the technical stuff that we don't learn as when we're taking drum lessons.
It's every bit as important to the sound.
Totally.
There's this notion that, oh yeah, it should just sound like it does in the room. You just put up mics and then it's done, which isn't necessarily true.
That's a part of it, but it's also how that is processed once it gets to the desk.
Yeah.
Those all the elements that are involved are it's pretty intense. There's a lot to know.
I just feel like once it becomes an electric signal,
Yeah.
it's something else.
It's
and that's
something
okay.
else. Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah, that is fun.
Ryan, who is a great drummer, has played on lots of records for the Discord label out of DC.
Nice.
Wonders how you feel about using a click track.
Well, I think it's a necessary evil in today's recording market. Like, if you're going to be a session guy, then you got to know how to do all that kind of stuff.
Have you always been comfortable with it?
Yeah, I think I have. I've always played to a metronome on a practice pad, like learning snare drum rudiments.
Do you have an innate clock? Like
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I think I have an innate clock. Yeah, because I've tested it in the studio before, and it's pretty close.
When you're playing with a click, do you ever feel like you're aware that you're moving away from it and
Yes.
that you move yourself back to it?
Yeah. And I think when you do that with the click track, you're able to sort of have that innate clock thing solidified better because you can find that, center pulse in your in internally, as opposed to just kind of flailing along. And
Steve Gadd said that it's all about learning how to get back on, not learning to never fall off.
Oh,
It's
wow,
like,
cool.
you have to learn how to come back onto it or push ahead a little bit here and drop back a little bit there.
Right.
I remember when I first started recording with the click, if I would feel a little bit off, then I would jump back on, and then you listen back to the tracks, and
You can hear that
it jumping around.
Yeah. Or you get nervous for a split second,
Yeah.
and that comes through in your drumming. Like if you stop breathing for a moment, you can hear that in the recording.
Yeah, how
sure.
meticulous are you about takes? Do you try to be totally prepared when you go into the studio, or do you let things happen in the studio?
I like to be as prepared as the project allows, or the record, the band allows at that stage.
When you've done big budget records, do you do lots and lots of takes, or do you prefer to do it quickly?
Well, Superunknown was probably a good example of a big budget, multi-take, 5-month record where we did. The drums were done pretty quickly. I think I did the drums in about 2 weeks, and I would do no more than 4 takes, maybe 4 or 5 takes. But one thing I was going for there was top to bottom performances, like good performance elements in the takes, things like that. And that was no click track. So I think sometimes it frees me up as a player in the studio to not have to play to a click track, like I'm able to kind of, I think, get more musical takes.
So there was no click track. Were you recording along with anybody else?
Yeah,
you were.
Yeah.
Okay.
We were all playing together.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. But I think, I
And
don't know how much
sometimes other
that
guys would punch in.
Yeah, well, they would.
top of your
I'd play it.
take.
Yeah, I think they would just kind of redo their parts, basically. Yeah. But click tracks, yeah, it's something you got to learn how to do. I've never been on a tour where I've been in a band where we played along 2 tracks, but I know that's a real common occurrence with modern touring acts these days.
One more question. Mike asks how the project with Janet and Zach happened and how it felt.
Well, Sleater Kinney opened for Pearl Jam in 2005, I think it was. And we just got along great. Janet and I got along so good. I did with all the girls. And we were big Hella fans. Hella had opened for Sleater Kinney around that time, I guess. And so we just loved Zach's playing. We're just huge Zach Hill fans. And so Janet just wanted to get the 3 of us in a studio for a couple days and see what happened.
How did it feel?
It felt crazy. We were just trying to just keep up with Zach. We just kind of set him up in the middle, and we just kind of watched Zach play. And I swear, that guy could play for like 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, no problem.
Yeah.
I remember coming back from that, I think it was 3 days in the studio, and my arms were just so sore after that, trying to keep up with him. But it was fun. And we listened back to, I don't think I've really listened back to it more than a couple times.
I had to, I joined a band for some tours that Zach had played on the records.
Whoa.
So I had to learn a bunch of his stuff. And the way that he thinks is opposite to the way that I think and instinctually feels. So It was actually a really fun experiment to try to learn his parts verbatim, but try to put my own feel on it.
Wow.
It took a long time to get it down.
I bet.
That was with Marnie Stern. Do you know her? Yeah.
Sure. I just played with her at the 8G.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
At Seth Meyers.
Yeah. So, yeah, I love Marnie.
Oh, yeah. She's great.
Thank you so much.
Hey, you're welcome. You're welcome, Joe.